Just wanted to review that overnight. My understanding is he has, and we have a stipulation to admit People's 10. We don't intend to publish it at this time.
No objection.
All right, People's 10 is admitted. Would you like to call your next witness?
Thank you, Judge. People call him Edward Smothers.
Right in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir, right this way. Watch your step. Make sure the chair doesn't roll off there.
So I know this is intimidating, and I can see that you're soft-spoken, so you just kind of have to lean into the microphone, okay?
Yeah.
Would you state your name, please?
Edward Smothers.
Would you like some water?
No, I'm
All
fine.
right. You're going to have to definitely scoot up closer to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Ed, how old are you?
14.
Okay. Were you 14 on April 20th of last year?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember on April 20th of last year going to a birthday party at the Swan Boat Club?
Yes.
Who did you go with?
Mariah.
Mariah Dodds?
Yeah.
Just
All right.
right into the mic, Ed. Okay? Who is Mariah to you? Is she related to you?
Yes.
How?
Aunt.
Pardon?
Aunt.
She's your aunt?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember being at the party?
Yes.
And what did you do while you were there?
Played out back for the most part.
Played some of the games and things?
Yeah.
Do you remember something happening that ended the party?
Yes.
What happened?
The car went through the building.
Okay. Where were you? Well, did you hear the crash?
Yes.
Do you remember it happening?
Somewhat.
Okay. Do you know where you were when you heard the crash?
Not exactly.
Were you in the main party room, outside?
In the main party room.
Okay. Do you remember what you were doing when you heard it?
No.
After the crash, what's the first thing you remember?
Just waking up on the floor.
Okay. Were you in the same room?
In the walkway into the main party room.
Is that where you were when you heard the crash?
No.
So you woke up in a different room from where you heard the crash?
Kind of. I was more or less just in that walkway, sort of.
Okay. Once you woke up, you called it a hallway, like a breezeway?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing what's the first thing you remember after you heard the crash?
Just looking around.
And how did you feel?
After that, I just stopped thinking and started to panic.
Okay. Could you walk?
No.
Okay. Could you stand up?
I didn't try because it hurt too.
Okay.
Try.
What hurt?
My leg.
All right. Eventually, did police and EMTs and firefighters come in and help you out?
Yes.
Do you remember riding in an ambulance to the hospital?
Yes.
Is that what happened? You got taken to a hospital by ambulance?
Yeah.
Do you know what eventually was wrong with you?
I broke my femur.
You broke your leg?
More or less, yeah.
Okay. Did you have to have surgery on that leg?
Yes.
And were you on crutches afterward?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for Mr.
Cross.
Judge.
I don't have any questions.
All right, thank you. You may be excused. Next witness.
Judge, people call retired Deputy John Krieger.
Would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Yes, sir. John Krieger, Joncregar.
Thank you, Judge. Deputy, back on April 22nd of 2024, who were you employed by?
The Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
And you've since retired?
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank you.
At the time, you were a certified law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan?
Yes, I was.
And what position did you hold in the sheriff's office at that time?
Sheriff's deputy.
Okay. What was your assignment on April 22nd?
April 22nd, I was assigned to the expediter position within the sheriff's office, taking reports over the phone.
Okay. Were you given a unique assignment that day?
Yes, I was.
What was that assignment?
I was asked to transport the blood evidence kit to the Michigan State Police Lab,
And where's the Michigan State Police Lab?
Lansing, Michigan.
Okay. So you were to drive the blood evidence, in this case, from Monroe to East Lansing.
Yes, sir.
About what time did you pick up the blood from evidence?
Sometime around 8:30 in the morning.
Okay. And you physically transported it, I assume, in a patrol car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you pick up a blood kit from evidence. Did it look roughly like this?
Yes, sir.
How many blood kits have you dealt with in your career as a deputy?
Quite a few. I don't know the exact number.
How long were you a deputy?
25 years, 8 months.
Okay. Did that blood kit that you picked up from evidence look any different from any of the other ones you've dealt with in your career?
No, sir.
Did the box appear to be in good shape?
Yes.
Was there any damage to it?
No.
On the trip between Monroe and East Lansing, did anything of note happen?
Nothing happened.
Okay. Did you ever leave the car?
No, sir.
No stops for lunch or breakfast or bathroom break or anything?
No.
So the kit was in your possession the whole time?
Yes, it was.
Where did you maintain the kit while you were driving up there?
It was on the front passenger seat of the patrol car.
And you eventually made it to the Michigan State Police Crime Lab
Yes, I did.
and delivered it to a technician there?
If I can refer to my report for the exact
Sure.
name. So I met with Lab Supervisor Samantha Bokamp and Forensic Technician Kathy Hepner, and I handed the kit directly to Kathy Hepner.
Okay. And what time about was that?
I want to say it was around 10:30.
Okay. So about a 2-hour trip up there?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions for the retired deputy judge?
Cross?
Congratulations on being retired.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Deputy, when you were transporting this blood kit, did you know whose blood kit it was?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did it have it marked on the kit itself?
Yes.
Okay. And do you usually transport them, or do you usually, in your experience, it be sent by mail?
It goes usually by mail, but by the evidence coordinator.
Okay, and this one was sent personally, was driven up there, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And what department with the state was it handed off to?
It was handed directly to a lab technician at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab.
And on the way up there, did you have it in any type of a container that would have had, like, you know, sometimes lunches have an ice pack or something in there to keep it cool or keep it cold?
No.
And do you know what the temperature was that day? Do you have any idea at all?
I don't recall what it was.
And then once you arrived, did you go there alone?
Yes.
And then after you took this 2-hour trip and you arrived there and you sort of handed it off, do you know what anybody did in front of you that you would have witnessed what they did with it?
Not once I handed it to the lab technician. No, I don't know what they do with it from there.
You get like a receipt signed?
I checked it in, I signed in when I arrived there.
Did you get a receipt from them?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And then you just, you drove back to the station and carried on as a normal day, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Judge.
May this witness be excused.
People, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Next witness.
Judge, people call Roe Monday.
Roe Mundy, M-U-N-D-Y.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Mundy. Miss Mundy, what do you do for a living?
I'm a phlebotomist.
And could you tell the jury what a phlebotomist is?
Oh, I draw blood. Like, that's a really...
In a hospital setting, in a
Yeah,
doctor's
medical.
office?
Yep. In a hospital, and, yeah, outpatient, all the above, yes. Whatever ProMedica asks, that's where I go.
Okay. Who do you work for?
ProMedica,
And generally out of Toledo?
out of Toledo.
How long have you been a phlebotomist?
Over 10 years.
Okay. What does one have to do to become a phlebotomist?
You go to school I went for a year. Some people go for less than that.
Okay.
And, yeah, when you get certified, you take a test and you get registered or certified. I got
And-
registered.
And you took that test and you got certified?
I got, yeah, registered. Under the state, yes.
And that was some 10 years ago?
Yeah, almost 15 years ago.
Okay. And that certification has been in good standing this whole time?
Yes, because I'm still working, so I stay under the regulations, correct?
Okay. Do you have to recert every so often?
You take continuing education.
Okay. So you need so many CE credits a year?
Every month you take them. You take it certified to keep you in good standing.
And you've done that throughout the length of your career?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
Over the course of your career, how many blood draws would you say you've done?
Thousands. Thousands.
Okay.
I do at least 90 to 120 a day.
Okay.
So
And do you have like a nurse's schedule? You work like 3 days a week, probably?
I work a lot of hours. I do it Monday through Friday for the most part, yes.
Okay.
12-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, just depending
All right.
on what's available.
And you're mostly out of ProMedica Toledo, you said, right?
Correct.
But you'll do coverage shifts in other hospitals?
As long as it's under ProMedica, yes. Monroe is under ProMedica, so when their schedule is low, if they put it into Toledo, we can pick up out here, and so that's what I do. I pick up here in Monroe's hospital.
Is that what happened on April 20th of last year?
Correct, yes,
You were working in ProMedica Monroe.
yes.
Through the course of your employment, did you encounter the defendant, Ms. Chidester, in this case?
Yes.
Why did you encounter her?
It's called a legal draw for ProMedica, and we had to come down to the emergency room and draw, whatever. When they call, they call it a legal draw. So we just come down, and the deputy is there, and then we draw the patient,
Okay.
that's why I encountered her.
All right. What's the difference, if you know, between a legal draw and a regular blood draw?
Well, it's just deputies is there, is present. Any other draw, I don't have to have a nurse unless it's like a combative patient or something. So that's the difference.
Okay.
An officer is present.
Is there other paperwork that you fill out for a legal draw?
Yes, it's a whole checklist that we have to fill out.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes.
Where do you get the checklist?
Well, when I come down, it's already there, but I believe that the nurses give it to the deputy, or the deputy already has it.
Okay.
I'm not really positive. They already have it on the station for me.
Okay. So the checklist is supplied to you.
Correct.
You fill it out.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, two of us fills it out. The deputy fills it out, like signs, like as a witness, but I fill it out, check everything, and yes. Is that what you're asking?
That is what I'm asking.
Okay.
And Ms. Mundy, I'll show you this document. Do you recognize this?
I can take it. Okay. Yes.
This is what's been pre-marked as Defense 16. And what's the title of that document, Ms. Mundy?
The blood,
I don't know if he's moving this time.
He was not.
Pardon?
blood alcohol collection checklist?
And is that the document you filled out in this case?
Yes. Yes.
And that's your signature on there?
Yes,
Okay. At this time, people would have moved to admit the blood alcohol collection checklist as people 16.
Okay, you said defense 16 previously. You mean people 16.
Oh, yeah, I do
Okay.
mean that.
All right. Well, fine. Okay. All right. People 16 is admitted.
So, Ms. Mundy, could you describe for the folks on the jury, what's the procedure for doing a legal blood draw?
well, I go through this checklist and verify the officer, they state the person's name and they have an ID there present also. And then, the witness or the patient I'm drawing is who, they either say yes or the officer says, yes, this is who the person is, because they have the ID. And then,
So the first step is you verify
Who
with
the
the
patient
officer
is,
that the
yeah.
patient that you're drawing from is who the person they want you to draw.
correct.
And then
And the
you-
officer says something to the patient, well, I consider it the patient, but yes.
Gotcha. And they identify the patient for you. You begin the process. What do you do then?
I set up
Okay.
for my draw. Is that, I don't,
Well, just
through
explain,
my
you know.
checklist, is that what you're asking? I mean,
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm asking, specifically in this case, did those, well, let's do it this way.
Yes.
Specifically in this case, did those things that you're describing happen?
correct.
Okay, so you came down to the emergency room, is that right?
Correct,
And there's a deputy there.
correct, with the patient. A nurse is there, they don't stay, but the nurse is there also.
Okay,
Then they give me a kit, and it's a box kit.
okay.
And then, I open the kit, there's tubes in it, take them out. You gotta label them. And then, I draw the patient, pull out my tourniquet. And I don't know if you want me to pull out all those steps, but yes.
Okay. And all those steps, did those happen in this case?
Yes.
Do you recall the time of the blood draw in this case, Ms. Mundy?
No, I mean, if I look back at the document, but,
Can you look at the?
yes, it says 1835, which means 6:35.
Okay. So I think where we were at in the process was you said, I set up. So what is that process and what was that process in this case?
You just pull out a tourniquet, you glove up, you pull out a tourniquet, you pull out your needle after your tubes and everything is labeled. And the difference with a regular blood draw also is I use alcohol. In this case, I didn't use an iodine patch that comes with the kit. So you do that. I have the iodine and then I have the gauze. I go over to the patient, I draw the patient.
Okay. And you draw the patient into the tubes provided in the kit.
Correct.
Do you inspect the tubes before you do the draw?
Well, yes, for the most part, yes. They're not expired is what I'm looking for.
Okay. Because you have to label them?
Correct.
Okay. So you get pretty up close to them.
Yes,
Is there a preservative in those tubes?
yes,
Was there a preservative in those tubes in this case?
yes.
So when you set up, you said you use a tourniquet, some gauze. What's the item called that
The
goes?
vacuum container is a vac, the
Okay.
vac needle. You know,
Right,
it's just a
that
needle
goes right into the,
to the arm,
Okay.
into the vein, is what yes, into the vein.
okay.
You put the tube onto the vacuum and push it in and blood pulls out. It's a pre-vacuum tube.
That piece of equipment, in this case, was that sterile?
Yes,
How
comes
do you
out of a
know?
package. You open a package every time. If anything's open, we discard it. You know, so yes, it comes out of a package a package. Open it and pull the needle out. Before I draw, I take a lid off of the actual needle. And that's not until I'm ready to actually draw the patient.
Okay. So that's a sterile instrument that comes out of a sealed package?
Correct,
And that's what happened in this case?
yes.
And you already said you cleaned the I'm going to say it wrong.
The patient's arm.
Yeah, with iodine?
Yeah, but the location that I was gonna draw it, correct.
So once you're all set up, you set up the patient for the draw, what do you do?
Tie the tourniquet.
Okay, and then what?
Yep, feel for the vein. Once I know, I wipe her arm, wipe the patient's arm in this, and then I draw the blood. Put the needle in, put the tube on, and the blood pulls out.
What do you mean by pulls out?
It sucks, it's a pre-vacuum tube, so it sucks into, it's a needle, so it's,
So in other words, you've got the contraption set up on the arm. It's a tube with a vacuum in it.
yes, the tube is correct.
And so when you place the tube on the needle,
It's, yeah, it shoots into the,
it just fills.
yes,
And did that happen in this case?
yes,
You put the tube on the needle and it just filled.
yes, it fills up, correct.
What does that tell you about the vacuum?
That is a seal, there's no, nothing's broken, there's no fault in neither the needle or the tube itself.
So if you put a tube on there and it didn't fill, what would that tell you?
It means it's not vacuumed.
Would you
It's-
use that
I
tube?
wouldn't use that, they would have to give me another tube at that point. Start the draw over, pretty much.
Gotcha. But in this case, the tube's just
Everything
filled.
filled, there's 2 tubes that was needed to be filled, and both tubes filled with no problems.
And you did that for 2 vials.
Correct,
And then you had testified earlier that there's a preservative in that tube. You saw it in this case.
correct.
And what do you do to the tube in relation to the preservative once the blood
You
is drawn?
invert a few times, like you don't sit there and do this, you just invert it, back and forth, so it all is mixed in,
Okay. Did you do that in this case?
yes.
And both of these tubes, they were drawn in accordance with the procedure on the checklist?
Correct,
And they're drawn in accordance with standard medical procedure?
correct,
And you said you filled out the labels on the tube.
yes,
After you get done, you take a look at the labels and you confirm that?
correct,
And those were both, in this case, labeled with the name of the patient,
yes.
the date,
Date and time,
and your initials?
I believe it's initials, it's not my signature, signature's on this paper, so yes,
Okay. And you did that right in the room, correct?
correct,
Right with the defendant next to you?
yes.
So you get called down to the ER, you don't work down there all day.
No,
Is there a physician in charge of the emergency room
yes,
at ProMedica Monroe?
yes,
And was there a physician in charge that day?
yes.
Once you've done the draw, you've inverted the tubes, you've labeled the vials, what do you do with them then?
You put them back into when you pull them out of the box, there's this, compartments that you put them in, so they don't crack to each other, because they're glass tubes.
Right.
So, I put them back in that, put them back in the box, and give them to the deputy. Well, actually, I don't put them in the box, I just put them, and they put it in, the deputy puts it in the box.
Okay, that's
Just to
generally how you do it?
verify everything is correct too. A second check, I guess. But yes,
So I'm sorry, we were talking over each other. You give them back to the deputy, I think you said, so the deputy can verify everything's correct as well?
correct,
And is that what happened in this case?
yes.
After you gave the vials back to the deputy, what did you do?
I go back to,
That
Yeah.
concluded your contact with the defendant in this
correct,
case?
yes,
And you didn't have anything else to do with her?
no,
Haven't seen her since,
no,
until today?
yes.
Do you recognize the patient from that day here in the courtroom?
I do, yep,
Okay. Did you point her out for the court?
yeah,
Parties stipulate that this witness has identified the defendant.
And I'll take that back from you, Ms. Mooney. Thank you. And Judge, I don't have any further questions for her.
Cross?
Thank you. Ma'am, my name is Bill Kolovis, and I represent Ms. Marshella Chidester, the defendant in this case. That's why I'm sitting next to her, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. We've never had opportunity to talk, you and I, or discuss this case, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Have you ever talked to anybody at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office or the Monroe County Prosecutor's Office prior to this moment?
Yes.
Who have you talked to?
I believe his name is Ken. I'm not really positive what the
And I
name is.
apologize, did you say Ken?
I believe, I may be wrong. I don't know what the,
This is, there's not more than
Okay.
two, this is Mr. Ken Lorraine.
okay, that's
Do you
why I
think
talked
you
to
spoke
Lorraine.
with him?
Yes.
Okay. When did you initially speak with him, if you recall? Any time period, like, April of last year, April,
No,
February
just,
this year?
it was this year that I spoke to anybody.
Okay. And what was the discussion that you had?
Pretty much just being made aware that I will be, that I have to come and testify in this,
That you may testify or
that
be
I
a
may,
witness,
yes,
sort of?
that I may be subpoenaed for this.
Did you ever talk to him this morning?
This morning, no.
Have you talked to anybody from the prosecutor's office this morning?
Yes, they called to make sure I was here.
I'm sorry, who
They
did
just-
you, I'm sorry, who did you speak with?
I don't know. Whoever it was the prosecutor, said they were at the prosecutor's office. I can't recall a name. They just said Monroe's number came through my phone to make sure I was here.
So when you arrived in the building, you went up to the third floor to the prosecutor's office?
Yes,
Okay.
I only made it off the elevator. They were waiting for, somebody was waiting for me
They were waiting for you when you came in the
to
building?
walk, yes. to
Okay, so
walk
you
me
went
over.
to security or the metal
Yes.
detector, and then they met you?
Yes,
Okay. Was it one person or two?
just one person.
Okay, was it a lady or
It was a
man?
guy. He's not, he said I didn't know his name either. He just said he was in the prosecutor's office. So
Okay.
the deputy had him walk me, to show me where I was supposed to be at this morning.
Okay, so he walked you to the courtroom here, outside the courtroom?
Well, was it Michelle? Is this the lady that just walked me in, Michelle? I'm not recalling nobody's
That's
name.
okay, take your time. I wasn't there, we weren't there, and I
Yeah.
just like to find out how you
A
made your way.
male, the officer said something, came up the elevator with him, and so he can direct me where I'm supposed to go.
Okay, and then you talked to a person you believe is named Michelle?
I believe so. I believe that's who just
Okay,
walked me
and
in,
where did you meet her?
off the elevator. Well, yes, in the prosecutor's door. Like I didn't even walk through yet.
Okay, by the prosecutor's office, did you say?
I'm not familiar with none of y'all's building here, so I don't know where I just came into a hallway. So I can't be
Okay.
specific about that type of stuff.
There's no test going to
Okay.
be, I totally understand and empathy that
So
you
I met
don't-
at doorways pretty much, so I don't know exactly where I was, so you're pinpointing that, I have no clue.
All right, I just
Thank you.
didn't know if you were in the hallway downstairs.
On the
or
third
whether-
floor.
Let's be careful, both of you, from talking over the other person.
I'm sorry, Judge. So did you come up to the third floor and you met this lady?
Yes,
Okay. And did she bring you to the courtroom?
yes, well, outside the courtroom, correct.
Okay. Was anything discussed about the case?
No,
No?
never spoke to anybody, no, nothing more.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, you stated that you work for the hospital, correct?
Correct,
And you still work for the hospital, correct?
correct.
Okay. And then there's two types of blood draws. You said a regular blood draw, and then what is the other, a legal blood draw?
It's called a legal blood draw.
Okay. And you, in your profession, can do a legal blood draw, or at least the hospital wants you to do the legal blood draw, am I correct?
Yes, I can do them, correct.
Okay. And then do you do regular blood draws, or do nurses do that? I'm going by my memory as to what you said earlier.
Yeah, I draw the patients, the regular, the only difference is regular is they're inpatient or outpatient, or they're in the emergency room, or the difference here is that a deputy is present in the room. That's the only
Okay.
difference. They're
I'm-
all blood draws.
I'm a little bit confused. I just ask you, when somebody gets brought in with a deputy or a legal blood draw, you handle those type when you're working?
Correct.
Okay. And if it's a person that's getting medical treatment, a nurse, registered nurse, whomever of a nurse, does those blood draws?
Correct.
Okay. And you're not a registered nurse?
No.
Or a nurse at all, correct?
No.
Okay. What does it take to become certified of your profession?
You go to school.
How long do you go to school?
I went for a year. Other people can go less or longer, depending on.
And it's like full-time?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you get a degree or a certificate?
I got registered. I got a certificate, and then I get registered with the state.
Okay. Do you have a degree of any type? I mean, in other words, it's not like a 2-year degree or anything like that, right?
No.
And you received that certificate or license about, did you say, 10 years ago?
Yes.
And have you worked in a hospital setting for the full 10 years?
No.
How long have you worked at your current hospital?
Yeah, I've been with ProMedica for 10 years, correct, but I haven't been in a hospital setting the whole time. I still do outpatient, is what I'm saying.
How long have you worked at your current hospital that you're at today?
I'm going to say for the last 2 years.
So about a year before this incident, correct?
Correct.
And do you work sort of a little bit hand in hand with nurses?
Yes.
And they've got the blood put away? They have blood for patients? Do you know where they keep that?
No.
You have no idea?
We send it to processing.
Okay, so when you want to give blood to a patient that needs it inpatient,
I don't
You know where
give
the-
blood to anybody. That's what I'm saying.
have you ever seen any nurses go get blood for somebody that's inpatient that needs blood? You've never seen it in 10 years?
No.
Do you remember, this happened April 20th of last year, 2024. Do you remember all the details of this specific incident of you working and drawing blood with my client?
For the most part, correct.
How many times do you think you've drawn blood in your profession since the 20th of April, 2024?
At least over 5,000.
5,000
Within the
since-
year, correct.
Okay, 5,000 since April 20th of 24?
Of 24, at least.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a comment, but it's amazing. 5,000. And you remember each and every single one?
No.
You said that, well, do you remember specifically, in this case, that day, looking in the tube to see what was at the bottom of the tube?
Not at the bottom of the tube, it's throughout the tube. It's like a
Do you
splash.
remember specifically looking at it, in this case, on that date?
Yes. I look at them, yes.
Do you keep notes?
No,
You just go by your memory, right?
correct.
And when you said that you invert the tube, is that what you said?
Invert, correct.
Okay. And when we saw the video, we saw a video yesterday,
Okay.
and I believe it showed you that you inverted or you tilted.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Watch your step and make sure the chair doesn't roll off. I got the chair.
Would you state your name for us and spell your last name, please?
My name is Kathy Hepner, Kathy, last name PPNER.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Hepner, where do you work?
I'm a forensic technician assigned to the Michigan State Police Lansing Forensic Lab.
Pardon on the last part?
Sorry. I'm assigned to the Forensic Science Division Lansing Lab.
Okay, Lansing Lab is what I missed. To be a forensic technician at the forensic lab, what kind of education does one need?
It requires an associate's degree in a hard science such as biology, chemistry, like that.
Do you have an associate's degree in a hard science?
I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Central Michigan University.
How long have you worked at the crime lab?
I have worked there since August of 2023.
And Ms. Hepner, did you prepare a curriculum vitae and give it to the prosecutor's office in this case?
Yes,
I'm going to show you this document that's been marked People's Exhibit 17. Does this look familiar to you?
yes it does.
Is that a copy of your resume?
Yes,
And you provided that to the prosecutor's office upon request?
yes I did.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of your experience in the field of forensic toxicology and being a forensic technician?
Yes,
Judge, people would have moved to admit Ms. Hepner's CV as People's 17.
No objection, Your Honor.
People 17 is admitted.
So Ms. Hepner, what does a forensic technician do?
in the toxicology unit, a forensic technician is responsible for receiving, opening, cataloging the tox kits that are received daily in the lab. We also assist the scientists, perform ancillary duties such as preparing reagents, stocking supplies, emptying biohazard, duties as needed.
Okay. And that was your job, that was your assignment on April 22nd of last year?
Yes, it was.
Were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you receive a specimen that brought you here to testify in this case?
Yes.
How did you go about receiving that specimen?
That specimen was a personal delivery. Deputy Krieger drove the specimen to the lab. When he arrived at the lab, the front desk staff notified the tox unit that he had arrived. Ms. Beecham and I went up to the front desk, and a hand-to-hand delivery was done directly from Deputy Krieger to myself.
Okay. Do you know about what time that delivery occurred?
That was at 10:24 a.m.
Is there a protocol in the forensic crime lab for the receipt and documentation of evidence?
Yes, we have a standard operating procedure. It is TX-PM 1.4 that covers all aspects of receiving, cataloging, logging in, transferring evidence.
So roughly, as it pertains to this case, what is that procedure? Or protocol, I should say.
So as I stated before, a direct hand-to-hand transfer was done. I then took the sample into the lab where I opened it, looked at forensic advantage. The tests that were requested were assigned. The evidence and the paperwork was all assigned a unique lab identifier that stayed with that evidence and that paperwork throughout the entire process. I guess that's about it.
Okay. So I'm going to hand you well, first of all, do you recognize this item?
I do.
What is this?
That is the standard toxicology kit.
Okay. I'm going to hand you this. It has its kit seal in place, but that's been cut so that you can open it. So
Yes.
you received a kit like that, pretty much in that condition.
Yes,
And you inspect the box first, I assume,
yes,
and you open the seal,
yes.
and then what do you do?
So I opened some informational slips of paper. Typically, there are two 10-milliliter gray top blood tubes, two small screw cap bottles in case urine is collected, the cardboard holder that the tubes are placed in a plastic bag in case they're damaged. There are alcohol prep pads. There are labels for both the bottles and the tubes. And then there is what is called the FSD 93. This is paperwork that is filled out. There's 3 sections to it. The top section is for the investigating agency's information. The middle section is the subject information, and then the bottom portion is filled out by the phlebotomist and states the medical facility, date and times that the blood was drawn. In this case, because it was a hand-to-hand delivery, there was also what is called an FS-17, which is a small pink slip of paper, and that is filled out by the deputy, and that states the date and time that it was delivered.
So that pink piece of paper, that's not in the kit?
No, that is
That's filled out
separate.
by the deputy delivering it?
Yes.
Okay. So the way this kit is packaged, aside from some of the superfluous stuff, the urine containers and things like that, is that roughly what the kit looked like in this case?
Yes.
And did it have an FSD 93 with it?
Yes, it did.
And was that filled out?
Yes, it was.
Were the tubes labeled?
Yes, they were.
And what do you do in regards to the labels on the tubes with the FSD 93?
I compare the information on the tubes to the information on the FSD 93 to make sure that everything matches. If there is any discrepancies, those are noted in the case comments. And if information is missing or doesn't match, we will reach out to the investigating agency.
So when you opened this kit,
Ms. Chidester, the defendant in this case, okay?
Yes.
And I asked you, and you've done a great job, if you could keep your voice up then, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. You, at the time that you took a handoff or took this from the police officer, took custody of it, you had been working for the state of Michigan, that division, for about 6-8 months?
Correct.
And where did you work prior to that?
Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, Michigan.
And after the form was filled out, when this was handed off to you, this kit, you gave it to, who did you give it to?
Once I was done logging in the kit, I did a hand-to-hand transfer with forensic scientist Tabitha Faust.
Okay. And then, did you see what she did with it?
No, that was the end of my contact with the kit.
Do you, is that solely your position back on the 20th of April last year, is to do these handoffs or receive things and hand them off to toxicologists?
Yes.
Do you work like a reception area, is it? Or?
At the time, no, I was part of the toxicology unit.
Okay, all right. And your sole position back then last year was to receive documents and then give them to a toxicologist, correct?
It was to receive toxicology kits that were submitted by law enforcement agencies.
And do what with them?
Open them, log in the information, and then typically samples would be put into storage. However, because this case was expedited, this was a direct hand-to-hand transfer.
Okay. And when you say when things are put into storage, what is storage?
It is a refrigerated, a walk-in refrigeration unit that is monitored daily.
And is it important that it gets monitored daily?
Yes,
It's a walk-in refrigeration unit.
yes.
And do you know why these specimens are kept in a walk-in refrigeration unit?
Not exactly.
You have no idea?
I can't answer to that.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Judge.
May this witness be excused.
She may.
Thank you very much.
May be seated.
People of the state of Michigan versus Marshella Chidester.
Bring in a jury, please. All right, you may be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Your next witness, Mr. Lawyer.
Thank you, Judge. Call Tabitha Faust from the Michigan State Police Crime Line.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Ma'am. Why don't you step? Make sure the chair doesn't roll off.
Yeah, we got it.
Would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Yes, my name is Tabitha Faust, F-A-U-S-T.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Ms. Faust.
Good morning.
Ms. Faust, where are you employed?
Currently, I am a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police Crime Lab in Lansing, Michigan.
How long have you been in that role?
I've been a scientist since December of 2021.
And how long have you worked at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab overall?
Overall, it's been since May of 2018. I started as a forensic technician and then was promoted to scientist in 2021.
Prior to your employment with the lab in 2018, did you have any previous employment in your field?
It was related. I worked for the DEQ in the water lab, so it was a laboratory, but it wasn't a forensics lab.
Okay. Ms. Faust, is the Michigan State Police Crime Laboratory an accredited lab?
Yes, we are.
What does an accredited lab mean?
So having an accreditation means that an outside agency comes in and they basically do different audits and they make sure that we are following our policies and procedures like we say we are, and that they meet the standards of the scientific community.
And who performs the lab's accreditation?
So we are accredited by an association called ANAB.
What does that stand for?
So the A is actually another acronym that's ANSI, National Accreditation Board, and ANSI is the American National Standards Institute.
And were you so employed on April 22nd of 2024?
Yes, I was.
And was the lab's accreditation current at that time?
Yes.
Ms. Faust, what education did you have to obtain to hold your current position?
So I have a bachelor's in biochemistry from Eastern Michigan University.
Beyond your bachelor's degree, did you have to receive any training to hold your position?
Yes, the Michigan State Police Toxicology Unit does a module-based training. So what that is if you want to get certified in alcohol analysis, you have to complete the alcohol analysis module. And that entails watching a competent scientist do the analysis, practicing doing repeats. And so what we would do is we would reanalyze samples that were already analyzed to make sure the results matched. And for alcohols, it's about 200 repeats. And then we have to pass an oral, an actual a competency test, like the actual analysis, and then we have to do a written competency test.
And about how long does that take?
It depends on the scientist and the workload, and like for me, I was also still doing some of my technician duties. So I think for my scientist training, it took a couple months.
And all those tests, the competency tests, the practical, the oral, the written, you were able to pass all those?
Yes.
Do you continue to receive training to hold your position?
Yes, we're required to get continuing education credits as a scientist. I have to get 7 every 2 years, and that involves going to society meetings. Like, for example, last October, I went to the Society of Forensic Toxicologists meeting in St. Louis. So that's a week-long conference where I went to different lectures and saw different research in the field. So we're required to do that. We're required to read articles. We also have to attend the Borkenstein class for both alcohol and drugs.
And how often do you have to attend that class?
It's required only once, but we are encouraged, if we are interested in going again to get a refresher, the state will allow us to do that.
Have you attended that at least once?
Yes, I've attended both the alcohol and the drug workshop once.
Other than what you already mentioned about your training to become a forensic toxicologist, do you receive any specialized training to analyze for the presence of alcohol in blood?
Yes, as I said, there's an alcohol module for testing samples, and I completed that.
And could you is that the training you already described?
Yes, it is.
And outside of what you've already described, do you have any requirement to maintain your current position, to attend continuing education?
Yes, as I said, we're required to do the continuing education, but we are also required to do proficiency tests every year. And what that is that an outside agency will send us a sample of blood with a known alcohol, but we don't know what the result is. And so we test it, report it to the outside agency, and then they let us know if we are correct with our results.
And that's once a year you have to do that?
It's once a year we have to do some form of proficiency test. Because like I'm certified in multiple analyses, so I don't have to do every analysis every year. It's every 5 years for every analysis I'm competent in.
Since you brought it up, what analysis are you competent in?
So I am competent in alcohol analysis, THC, our low dose or LC drugs of abuse panel, and our gabapentin panel, and our preliminary drug screen.
Prior to the date in question here, had you ever tested a blood sample for alcohol?
Yes.
About how many times prior to April 22nd, 2024?
I stopped counting after about 12,000.
Have you ever testified before, Ms. Faust?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever been qualified as an expert in forensic toxicology in the state of Michigan?
Yes, I have.
How many times, if you know?
I've been qualified as an expert 22 times.
Is that all the times you've testified?
No, I've testified a total of 38 times in court.
Ms. Faust, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked People's Exhibit 19. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is my curriculum vitae or CV.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of your qualifications as a forensic toxicologist?
Yes, it is.
And you prepared this,
Yes.
and you submitted it to the Monroe County Prosecutor's Office at our request?
Yes, I did.
Judge, move to admit Ms. Faust's CV as People's 19.
No, Judge.
Plaintiff's 19 is admitted. People's 19, I'm sorry.
Judge, at this time, I move to qualify Ms. Faust as an expert in forensic toxicology.
Mr. Clemens?
I'm sorry, Judge. My client's
He moved for the admission of her as an expert in forensic.
Yes.
All right. Court determines that this witness is in fact an expert in forensic toxicology.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Faust, turning your attention to April 22nd, 2024. Did you receive a blood specimen that brought you here to testify in this case?
Yes, I did.
Do you know how that specimen was delivered?
Specifically to me, it was hand-delivered by our forensic technician, Kathy Hopner.
Is Is that typical of a blood specimen to be delivered to you by a technician?
It is a little atypical. Most of the time it goes into storage before being analyzed for alcohol, but this case had a rush on it, and so it was hand delivered to me so I could prepare it for alcohol analysis right away.
And what was the nature of the specimen you received in this case?
Can you clarify?
What physically did you get?
Yes. So I received 2 gray top tubes with approximately 9 milliliters of blood in each.
Okay. Were those tubes labeled?
Yes, they were.
And do you recall what name was on the labels?
Yes, it was a Marshella Chidester.
And did that match all the intake documentation with the tubes?
Yes, it did.
So after you received the sample from the technician, you ascertained that it was properly labeled and documented?
Yes, as part of our alcohol analysis, we will check all the evidence in a case that we receive against with the information in our system. That way we make sure it's accurate and we're testing the correct samples.
Once you did all that, what did you do in this case?
So in this case, after the tube check, I prepared the sample for alcohol analysis. And so to prepare a sample for analysis for alcohol, we take a small bit of blood out of the tube, about 50 microliters. We then mix it with an internal standard. We do this 2 separate times. So I will take 2 bits of blood out of the tube and put it into 2 separate vials. Those are then run on 2 different instruments. So we actually analyze all the blood samples 2 different times.
So you're running 2 tests simultaneously on the same sample?
Yes, we will prepare the sample for analysis twice because we have what we call GC 19-1 and 19-2, which are 2 separate instruments that we run on.
Okay. Those instruments, are those calibrated and tested prior to you running samples?
Yes, I prepare a calibration curve with every alcohol batch I run, so it is calibrated every single run.
Is there anything else to describe about the method the Michigan State Police Crime Lab uses to test blood?
So the method itself is called headspace gas chromatography, and what that is the sample is in the vial is heated, and the air above it is what the instrument actually samples, and it's run through a column, which is just a special tubing. That tubing then separates the compounds. We actually look for 4 different alcohols, and then the detector at the end will quantify and tell us how much of each compound is in that sample.
And do you have experience using this method?
Yes.
How much?
As I said earlier, thousands.
So it's the same method every time?
It is the same method every time.
And all the experience you've gained with this method, this has all been at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab?
Yes.
Does the lab have protocols in place for this method?
Yes, we do.
And what is the protocol for using this method?
So the protocol is named determination of ethyl alcohol in samples, and that protocol is used to try to standardize as much as possible how all the alcohol analysis that is done by the Michigan State Police is done the same general way every time.
Why do you have that protocol?
As I said, it's to standardize how the tests are run. There might be subtle differences between scientists, like if you're left-handed, then you're going to pipette with your left hand. But in general, the method and how the samples are analyzed are the same throughout the entire toxicology unit.
And in this specific case, did you follow that protocol?
Yes, I did.
As best you can in layman's terms, can you describe further the method and modality you use to analyze the blood?
So as I said earlier, it's headspace gas chromatography, so the vial is heated, the air above it is sampled. Our instruments actually have 2 separate columns, and so this is done in each instrument twice, and that gives us 2 results per instrument, so we do get a total of 4 results. We analyze for not only ethanol, we also include acetone, isopropanol, and I am blanking on the last one.
Another type of alcohol.
Methanol, that's what it is.
And you performed that analysis on the sample in this case.
Yes, I did.
Do you know when you performed it?
So I don't know exactly when I prepared the sample because the system that I use is I sit down and I prepare all of the quality control samples and the casework samples, so it's a total of 89, give or take, depending on if there's extra or repeats. And I will prepare those all at the same time, and then I will place them on the instrument and then run the instrument. So I don't know exactly when I would have pipetted it. I do know when the sample was run through the instrument because the instrument will track that, and that was at 21:19.
For those of us not familiar with military time,
I'm not very familiar with the year. I think that's 9:19, I think.
9:19 p.m.?
Yes.
You folks work that late?
No, so our instrument, the runtime for a standard alcohol batch is a little over 7 hours. And so because it takes us time to prepare the samples and then run them on the instrument, most of the time what we do is we'll start the instrument, it will run overnight, and we will go back the next day, collect the data, process the data, and then write our reports.
Okay. And that's what happened in this case?
Yes.
So you can't say for sure when you actually prepared the sample and put it in the machine that tests it?
No, because as I said, I prepare them all. I will just sit in front of our fume hood where we do all our sample prep, and I will just pipette one at a time and just keep going through the 70 until I'm done. So I don't keep track of what time I prepare each sample.
So what are the steps in preparing a sample?
So we use what's called a pipetter diluter to prepare the sample. And what that does, the best visualization is it kind of looks like a coffee stirrer straw. So it's a thin straw, and we use that to draw up the amount of blood we need from each tube. And then as it dispenses into the vial for the instrument, it also dispenses not only the blood, but the internal standard that we use.
And you use a separate straw for each sample?
We don't, I rinse it in between, and I also wipe it off with a specialized cloth that is designed for blood, so that way it's clean in between each sample.
So you describe it as a straw, but this is a instrument made out of something other than plastic?
Yes, the whole instrument there's metal, it's got like a handle on it with a button, and that's how I draw up and dispense the sample. But it's just the easier to visualize, that's what I use.
Are there procedures in place at the lab to verify the accuracy of your analysis?
Yes, we have a lot of quality control. One thing is the calibration curve, like I spoke of earlier, and that is we pipette a known amount of alcohol in different vials that we analyze, and that kind of tells the instrument, okay, a 0.10 alcohol looks like this. And so that's how we calibrate the instrument. We also run known control samples, and what those are known values that we intersperse in between casework to make sure that, okay, if this is supposed to be a 0.3 alcohol, that it comes out to a 0.3. And so that makes sure the instrument is continuing to work throughout the entire run. We also have, as I mentioned, the internal standard. So that is a kind of alcohol that typically is not found in a human body. And we monitor the amount of that throughout the entire run to make sure there is a proper amount and that it doesn't stray with, it doesn't get out of range, because that shows that there was an issue with that sample. And we also have peer reviews. So a supervisor will review my control pack, so make sure that everything is in range. And then even the data for individual cases is reviewed by other scientists before the report is released.
All of those quality controls that you just stated, were those all done in this case before you issued a
Yes.
These methods that you've been talking about, are these all accepted by the scientific community at large?
Yes, they are.
And if they weren't, you probably wouldn't have a lab accreditation, right?
It would be difficult, yes.
Were you able to obtain a result for the blood alcohol concentration from the sample obtained from the defendant in this case?
Yes, I was.
Did you prepare a report regarding that result?
Yes, I did.
If I could just show you this document, Ms. Faust, just take a look at it to see if you recognize it. This has been pre-marked People's 20. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, so this is the report I prepared for the alcohol analysis of TX 24-5842.
And that is the lab case number, for lack of a better term, associated with the defendant in this case.
Yes, we assigned an independent lab number to all of our cases.
And you dated that lab report,
Yes, the report was completed on April 23rd.
and you signed it at the bottom.
Yes.
Is there a scientific degree of certainty that the MSP Crime Lab places on the results in issued reports like this one?
Yes, we have a measurement of uncertainty that we include with all of our alcohol results.
And does this report meet that degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, it does.
People move to admit People's 20.
And just to take a look at what county's going to be up on it's not.
Sure.
No objection, Your Honor, that that's a report that you.
People's 20 is admitted?
And Ms. Faust, I'll hand that back to you. If you could just read into the record the results of that report that you obtained from doing a blood alcohol concentration analysis on the defendant's blood.
So my result was 0.180 grams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood.
So what folks would commonly refer to as a .18.
Yes.
Do you know what the legal limit for alcohol is in the state of Michigan when operating a motor vehicle?
0.08.
Thank you, Ms. Faust. Ms. Faust, are you familiar with the term elimination rate as it pertains to alcohol in a person's body?
Yes, I am.
And just explain to the jury, if you could, what is that?
So the elimination rate is the rate in which your body can get rid of alcohol, because ethanol is something that the body doesn't actually like. So it tries to get rid of it, and there is average elimination rates for both males and females.
And what,
Maybe we have a sidebar, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
so did you conclude your answer? That what elimination rate is in the body?
There's a little more I would like to add.
Sure.
So the elimination rate is per an average person, but there's a lot of factors that go into it that can change it. Like if the person had eaten, the person's height, weight, things of that nature will affect the rate per an individual.
So this is, there's an accepted number in the scientific community for what an average elimination rate is.
Yes, there is an average elimination rate.
And there's one for men and one for women.
Yes.
And Ms. Faust, do you know what the average elimination rate in an adult female is?
Yes, that is 0.018
And that's per hour.
per hour as the average.
But you can't testify specifically to what it would be in this case.
I cannot testify to an individual's elimination rate, especially because it could change depending on the day.
All right, no further questions for this witness, Judge.
Cross. Excuse me. I'm gonna do one big cough. Excuse me. My name is Bill Colopas, and I represent the defendant, Marshella Chidester, that we've been talking about are the results. Okay?
Okay.
And you've been speaking up wonderfully. If you could just keep that up for all of us and record it. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. When you were talking about the elimination rate, for whatever reason, it's based upon, and I think you went through this, somebody's height, weight, did they eat, what did they eat, how long ago did they eat, and things like that, correct?
Correct. There are many factors that go into it.
All right, and to say a number would be almost, well, you would be guessing on a certain individual, right? Unless you took that all into consideration and figured out the best you could.
As I stated, it's just an average that for an adult female. So it's just an average of many people over many studies.
It could be somebody, weighing 200 pounds, somebody weighing 90 pounds, and they're just taking an average, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Somebody that ate, somebody didn't eat, taking an average, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. When you did this testing, and you have these, are they called columns? You do the testing, are they columns that it just measures different gases and the level of the gases, and then you come up with, whatever the 90 tests or 30 tests are that come back?
So the columns in the instrument that's what the sample goes through, and that separates out the volatile compounds, so then we can individually quantify all 4 that we're looking for.
Okay, and I've seen some records, and that's, sometimes a little bit of knowledge is bad rather than a lot of knowledge. When you put this sample in, such as in this case, do you heat it up or no?
So the instrument will automatically do that. The auto sampler takes the vial into the instrument. It's then put in a heater shaker that agitates it and heats it up. And then the instrument takes the air sample above the blood, and that's what gets analyzed.
Okay. I didn't do well in science or chemistry in school. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So just be patient with me. When it's heated up automatically, or however this instrument works, the gases go up, and as it's collected at different levels, then that's the different gas it is and how strong it is or how concentrated, or am I wrong?
So the air sample above, because it's being agitated, is everything's mixed together evenly. It's when it goes through the column that because all these compounds weigh different things, and they have a different likeness for that special tubing I was talking about, and so they tend to go through the detector at different times. And so we know that ethanol comes out at this time and methanol comes out at this time, and so we measure what the detector picks up. And so what the detector will do is if it has these compounds, it will make an actual graph that looks like a peak. And that's what we then measure to find out how much of that compound is there.
All right, thank you. I'm learning. Thank you. All right. So I want to just show you. I'll show the quietly for a moment. May I approach the witness? Yes. Sure. Thank you. I was given this, prosecutor has a copy. Please disregard where I wrote state police in yellow highlighted. That's just, I did it for myself. But what it shows
And if you have a copy of this as well.
All right.
Oh, you got a nice little booklet. All right.
Is this an exhibit?
No, it's not an exhibit
Not
yet.
marked.
It's not, no, it's not yet.
So what is the title of this so that we can identify it for the
What
record?
would you call this that it has?
So those are the chromatograms from the instruments.
Chromatograms.
Okay.
I'm learning, Judge.
All right.
Chromatograms, all right. And what, could you go to that section of your file,
Just the chromatograms,
please?
yes.
Now, the chromatograms, could you please explain to the jury, the court, what that means, that word?
So the chromatogram is just a fancy word for the picture of the peaks that the instrument has found. So you can actually see the physical, like, peak where the compounds are.
So when you say piece, that piece goes into a graph automatically?
The peak, yes.
Okay. Excuse me. And is that part of the report that automatically is emitted and on a computer or whatever, and you can print that out?
Yeah, so these are produced by our instruments, and it is what we use to then write our reports.
And if you could please, I don't know what page, it says 1 of 2 and then it says this.
Yes.
Do you mind going to that, please?
Yes.
Now, these are the compounds that are emitted in the columns. Is that correct?
So these are the readings from the detector after the column has separated the sample into its different compounds.
So the column gets heated automatically, and when it's heated, compounds come up, and then they get emitted, and then they're put eventually into a graph. Am I correct?
Yeah, so the graph is just a picture representation of what the detector picked up after the column has separated the sample into its different components.
And that's automatically done, correct?
Yes, that is done by the instrument and the processing software that we use.
And through the software and the instrument, these graphs are determined, correct?
Yes, they are produced by the instrument. We do process the data and make sure that everything worked correctly and that the processing method did what it was supposed to do.
And what you do is, because it takes so long for the instrument to do this, sometimes you'll set it up and it takes overnight for it to run all these compound tests or whatever, whatever it's called that it does.
Yes, it takes time to run each sample, and as I said, we have about 89 plus or minus samples per run.
And I might have not caught that. How many different compounds are typically tested? Let's say, how many different compounds in this test of Ms. Chidester was emitted or in a graft? Or
Are you asking how many compounds were found in this specific sample, or how many do we look for?
in this well, how many do you look for?
So we look for a total of 4 different alcohols.
4 different alcohols?
Yes, so an alcohol is just a type of compound in chemistry. So ethanol is your typical beverage alcohol. Methanol, acetone, as some people know, is nail polish remover. And then isopropanol, you use to disinfect like a cut.
And are there other things that you're checking for in addition to those 4 types?
The only other thing we're looking for is N-propanol, which is our internal standard, and we expect that to be in every sample.
And you said there's 4 different types of alcohol. I wasn't writing it down. What is one of them? Can you name one?
Ethanol.
Okay, and is that okay to be in your system, ethanol?
I mean, that could be debatable depending on some people, but that is the beverage alcohol is ethanol.
Okay, and what's the next one? Methanol?
Methanol is another alcohol we look for.
And
Is that okay for your system, or is that poisonous, or how is that?
Methanol is usually not okay for your system. It can cause blindness. I only know of there's very few cases where we actually see that.
And N-propanol,
That is the internal standard that should never be ingested by a person, and I think maybe 2 cases I know of since I've been there that we've actually found it. So that is the internal standard we use to check to make sure the instrument is running correctly.
all right, then you're gonna have to help me out. isopropanol.
So isopropanol, you can buy it in the drugstore. It's used as a disinfectant.
And acetone?
Yes, acetone, as I said, nail polish remover, or sometimes you may find in a diabetic, especially if they're having issues. So that is why we look for that one.
And is it just, is acetone, I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. Is that good to be in your system, acetone?
I don't believe it's ideal. I don't think it's necessarily poisonous at low or trace levels, but it's not ideal.
Can it have effects depending on the amount of duration and exposure?
I would imagine so, yes.
Is it sometimes concentrated amount used as a solvent,
Yes,
used in industries? A
yes.
solvent. What level of acetone are you showing in your records that Ms. Chidester had from the 2-pound gas?
So, let me check my notes. I found it was below our calibration curve, so it was not a reportable acetone, but I did find 0.002, so it was a very trace amount of acetone in this sample.
Okay, well, do you have this record that shows acetone?
Yes, I do. So that is a picture of the acetone peak blown up, so you can see details of the peak more, but the measurement is on page 1, and that's where it shows that it is a very small amount.
What number is down below when the peak started?
So those numbers are actually time.
Okay, and then the number up on top of the peak.
That is the exact retention time, so the time that the detector knows that that is acetone because it came out at that specific time.
And that confirms that it's acetone, right?
Yes.
And acetone can, it can develop how with blood? What would cause acetone to start going up in someone's system?
So as I said, sometimes we'll find it in diabetics. Sometimes some people will actually have ingested it. I know of one case that was an unfortunate attempted suicide where we found acetone at higher levels. But as I said, this level is way below our reportable levels, so it's very trace.
But it is reported on this sheet at least, right? It's showing.
It's listed on there because the detector found some, but it's not on the report because it was not reportable.
Now, acetone, if blood is fermented, is acetone developed? Do you agree?
I don't know of fermentation causing acetone.
Have you ever studied that area?
I have not.
You would have nothing to disagree if an expert or somebody came in and said that acetone will cause, as a result of fermentation of the blood.
I know fermentation can cause ethanol. I don't know of fermentation causing acetone.
But you've never studied that area, correct?
Not of fermentation causing acetone, but I have studied fermentation causing ethanol.
But in effect, you have no comment with regard to it causing a higher, is that correct? You didn't study it?
Acetone specifically, no.
Acetone. You
No.
didn't study it, you said, correct?
No.
Okay, so you really can't make a statement one way or another. You're being honest about it, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you go back to look at that page, please,
that I had shown you in your records. It's pretty high up there, don't you agree? And I'm looking at this page, the acetone. Doesn't it look pretty high up there?
So it appears high up because that peak is being zoomed in on, so that way we can properly make sure that it is integrated correctly and that, so those peaks themselves are blown up, but if you look at the big peak on the big picture on page 1, you will see that it's actually a very small peak, even spike, to where you can barely see it compared to the other peaks in the sample.
And then when I look at methanol, which is next to it, there's nothing in there, right? It's not dark.
Correct.
Okay. And then if I look at this go ahead.
Isopropanol.
Thank you. You can tell that's how much I deal with that. That's good. You're not showing anything there. No dark peak at all, right?
Correct.
But acetone, you're showing it's there. I mean, you may be, stating, well, it wasn't a lot or whatever, but you're showing it's there, correct?
Well, it's actually only there 3 of the 4 results as well, but in that it looks, because these are blown up peaks that were
Understand.
integrated in the sample.
I got it down. But you're showing it's there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's showing, you said 3 out of 4?
3 out of the 4 results, yes.
And that's a majority, right?
Yes, but as I said, it's trace.
And having concentrated amounts in your system, you can die from it, correct?
Yes.
Because it can be concentrated amounts in industrial solvent, correct?
Yes, but it would have to be a lot higher than these values.
I understand. And then you said that, what about this nail polish remover, rubbing alcohol? Not you said, I'm gonna ask you. Acetone is found in nail polish remover. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Would you agree that it's found in rubbing alcohol?
No, that is isopropanol mostly.
You're sure that it's not acetone?
I'm pretty sure because acetone would be very painful if put on a cut. So I do not believe it's included in the store. It says like 98% isopropanol.
And I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Redirect.
Briefly. Oh, you know what? One real quick question, and I apologize to the court. Your testing is only as good as the subject matter that's delivered to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now I don't have any other questions.
Redirect.
Thank you. Well, I'll start where he finished. Was there anything about this sample when you first got it that appeared abnormal?
No, it did not.
Okay. It appeared as every other sample you've tested?
Yes.
So, just to clarify, these tests on these blood samples, they're run 4 times.
So they're run 2 separate columns and 2 separate instruments, so we end up with 4 results.
Okay. The 4 results in this case, were they congruent? Were they similar?
Yes, part of our quality control is that all 4 results have to meet within a certain percentage of the average, otherwise the sample is repeated.
Okay. And so they were within that certain percentage in this case and it didn't have to be repeated?
Yes.
Mr. Clovis spent a lot of time on acetone. Is there a way that acetone can affect the ethanol reading?
No, because our instruments are very specific with the alcohols, and so the column's job is to separate those compounds out so that the ethanol reading is ethanol, the acetone reading is acetone.
You might have to correct me, but I think you testified that the test showed 0.0002.
Yes.
Is that correct, for acetone?
Yes.
So you don't say of what though? So because usually it's like nanograms per milliliter or something like that. So what What does .0002 what of what?
So that's grams per deciliter, which is the same units as ethanol from when you're reading it from the instrument. So it is, so it'd be 0.002 grams of acetone per 100 milliliters of blood.
Okay. What would it have to be for you to report it?
We don't start reporting acetone until 0.01.
I can't do the math on how many times that would have to go up then. No further questions, Ms. Faust, thank you.
Recross.
Thank you, Judge. Now, you said you don't start reporting it until .01, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's what you follow, what you do in your lab is .01, that's what you follow, right?
That is where our calibration curve starts. So anything below that, we cannot guarantee the accuracy of the number because we don't look that low.
All right, and then, if blood is not preserved properly and it ferments, does that cause an accurate or not an accurate test result for you?
Objection, outside the scope. It is outside the scope of redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing.
All right, may this witness be excused.
Not from the people. We'd like her to remain as a potential rebuttal expert.
Okay, all right. You're done for now, but you're not off the hook.
Okay.
Next witness.
Judge, people call Samantha Beecham on the Michigan State Police Department.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I do.
Man.
Would you state your name for us and then spell your last name, please?
Yes, my name is Samantha Beecham, B as in boy, E-A-U-C-H-A-M-P.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Beecham, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
Currently, I am a supervisor in the toxicology unit at the Michigan State Police Lansing Laboratory.
How long have you been a supervisor?
Been a supervisor since April of 2022.
And how long have you worked in the Michigan State Police Crime Lab overall?
I've been there since October of 2008, so about 16 years. And I started as a forensic technician and then was interviewed and promoted to forensic scientist in August of 2009.
Prior to working at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab, did you have any employment in your field?
Not in my field, no.
What did you do before you worked at the crime lab?
I worked in a plant biochemistry laboratory at Michigan State University.
So it was still in a hard science, it just wasn't in forensic science or forensic toxicology?
Correct.
How long did you work there?
About 6 weeks from graduation till employment at MSP.
Got it. So more or less you started at the crime lab right out of college?
Yes.
You mentioned your university. What education did you have to receive to hold your position?
I have a bachelor's degree of chemistry and molecular biology biochemistry, actually from Goshen College in Goshen, Indiana.
So your current position, I think you said supervisor of the crime lab, but did you indicate you're a forensic scientist or forensic toxicologist?
Yes, I'm a supervisor of the toxicology unit, not the whole lab, with experience as a forensic scientist in that unit as well.
And do you still engage in the day-to-day duties of a forensic scientist?
Some of them I perform a lot less casework, but I do stay up to date on my proficiency testing, and I'm training other people in doing those analyses at the moment.
Okay. So to do that, do you continue to receive training in your field?
Yes.
And what kind of training do you continue to receive?
2 weeks ago, I was at a conference called the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. It's a week-long course. I go to some Society of Forensic Toxicology meetings, as well as the Midwest Association for Toxicology and Therapeutic Drug Monitoring. Those last two I'm members of, and the MAT organization I am a past president of. So I'm involved in researching what I can, presenting at those, and just getting information from others in the field.
Okay. So that type of training, conferences and things like that, about how often do you attend those?
Usually a couple times a year for specific to toxicology training, and then there's always leadership trainings and things like that as well.
So some of them pertain to the day-to-day duties of the lab, and some of them pertain to your leadership role in the lab?
Correct.
To hold your current position, Ms. Beecham, did you receive any specialized training as it relates to performing drug analysis on blood?
Not technically for my current position as a supervisor, but as a forensic scientist, yes. I did a lot of testing other samples that other people have analyzed to make sure that I'm getting accurate results. We participate in proficiency tests, and some of the assays, like the one I will discuss today, I wasn't formally trained in it because I was part of a team that created that. So there's no way for us to get that training, but I am very familiar with all of the steps that we did to make sure that that is a valid method.
And thank you for clarifying and separating between your role as supervisor and your role as scientist. In your role, in order to be able to continue to run tests in the lab, do you have a requirement to continue receiving education in your field?
Yes.
And what is that requirement?
It is, I don't remember exactly how many points, but we have to have a certain amount of points of continuing education, which usually equates to attending the annual toxicology meeting that we put on. We usually bring in an outside person to give kind of a technical talk at that. Attending usually 1 or 2 conferences, and then usually reading a book or literature articles.
And you keep up with all of that?
Yes.
Prior to April 22nd of last year, have you ever tested a blood sample for the presence of drugs?
Yes.
About how many times?
Over the course of my career, I've tested over 40,000 cases for alcohol or drugs, probably about half and half.
Okay. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in forensic toxicology in the state of Michigan?
Yes.
How many times?
I've testified over 185 times, and I've been qualified every time I've been offered as an expert, probably somewhere around 120.
Ms. Beecham, I'm going to show you a document that's been pre-labeled People's Exhibit 21. Could you take a look at it and tell the jury what that is?
There are actually 2 documents stapled together here. The first 2 pages are my CV, or curriculum vitae, and the second 2 pages are those of Diane Bennett.
Well, that's a mistake. Thanks for catching that. The first 2 pages are an accurate reflection of your experience in the field.
Yes.
Judge, people would move to admit this as People's Exhibit 21 minus the extra pages.
I'm sorry.
No objection, Your Honor.
People's 21 is admitted.
Apologize, Judge, I'm just relabeling it for the court.
Okay.
Judge, at this time, I move to qualify Ms. Beecham as an expert in the area of forensic toxicology.
No objection, Your Honor.
Court determines this witness is an expert in forensic toxicology.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Beecham, were you working at the crime lab on April 22nd of last year?
Yes.
And Did you receive a blood specimen that brought you here to testify in this case?
Yes.
How, through the course of lab protocol, did you come to receive it?
I came into contact with it as our laboratory, once a sample needs a certain kind of test, those just kind of sit in our computer system. It was my turn to do one, so I pulled a batch of cases, and this was one of those.
Okay. And is that case somehow identified by name or number?
Yes.
And what name was associated with this sample?
We use a laboratory number mostly through our system, and then also as we're going through looking at the evidence, we make sure that the laboratory number matches the name that was on that paperwork.
And the number assigned to that sample, what name did it match?
It was, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but Marshella Chidester.
So when you procure the sample, is that brought to you? Do you get it from somewhere?
I go to our secure refrigerator and then pull out our technicians will prepare the batch together. So I will pull out the samples that I'm working with, check each of them individually, and then perform my analysis.
That's what happened in this case?
Yes.
And do you check the specimens to make sure they're labeled properly?
Yes.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes.
You checked the samples for irregularities?
Yes.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes.
Did you locate any?
No.
Did you follow all of the applicable protocol for this sample?
Yes.
So after you received the sample, or procured the sample, I should say, made sure it was properly labeled, documented, in good order, what did you do then?
Then I did an extraction on the blood called a protein precipitation. So I take a small amount of the blood and I put in acetonitrile, which is an organic solvent, and that basically makes all the proteins clump together. Put it in the centrifuge, and I take off the liquid that's on top of that. A small amount of that, then that is in the acetonitrile still, which can't go on our instrumentation, so that gets dried down. And I reconstitute it or redissolve it into something that can go on our instrumentation. So I did that and then ran it on the instrument with calibrators and controls, processed that data. It was reviewed by another analyst, and then prepared a report.
Okay. So is that the typical method the Michigan State Police Crime Lab uses to test samples of this kind?
Yes.
And you previously testified to it, but you guess you've done this about 20,000 times?
Each drug test is a little bit different. I'm not sure exactly how many of this particular type I've done, but in general, yes.
And all of those tests you performed, they were at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab?
Yes.
Outside of what you've described, does the lab have any protocols in place for this method?
We have different protocols that are things like quality control assurances, are making sure we comply with accreditation requirements, but the specifics about how the sample is tested is what I testified to.
Okay. Beyond what you've already described, is there anything to add about the method and modality that you use to analyze this sample?
We use I didn't speak about the instrumentation, which we use LC-MS-MS, which is liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry. And basically that is a system that the chromatography part will separate the different components that are in that blood sample, and then the mass spectrum helps us to identify what it is.
Can you explain as best you can to people who know nothing about chemistry how that works?
Which part of it? Or all of it?
I guess enough to make folks understand what it is that you do